Okay, this video is on cell communication. I'll have you look at this image, and in a moment, the video is going to stop for you to answer this question and type your response. What do you think is happening between the cancer cells? Looking at this image, you can see this is a normal cell. This is a cancer cell. What is happening over time? Type your response below. Okay, so to get into the answer to that question, we have to talk about why cells communicate. So, just like you and I communicate talking on the phone or sending a text, cells need to talk as well. There's a few reasons why. One is to maintain homeostasis. Homeostasis is a stable balance inside the cell, even when conditions outside the cell are changing. In the same way, our bodies maintain homeostasis when things outside of us change, like the weather, right? Our body needs to keep a stable body temperature. Well, within the cells, a lot of different things can change. For example, when you eat food and your blood sugar increases, then cells need to take in sugar, which we call glucose, right, to decrease your blood sugar levels. Another reason that they communicate is to coordinate and organize how they grow and making more cells. They also need to repair any damaged cells. Lastly, cells communicate to respond to changes like stress. They're going to release chemicals that help decrease stress and respond to stressful situations. And they also need to maintain a stable temperature. Okay, now there's a few different types of messages that are sent and received by cells. So the two main types are chemical messages. So chemical messages are typically hormones. These are chemicals that are made by the body, so they're not bad or anything, but they're made in the body. They travel through the blood from one cell to another. That hormone acts as a message. It's like sending a text, right? But we're using a chemical to send a message. Some hormones control body functions like growth, mood, stress, reproduction, okay? And they are chemicals that are made in the body. The other type of messages would be electrical messages that are sent by the brain through nerve cells. They send messages to either other nerve cells and muscles using what we call an electrical impulse. Okay, that electrical message gets sent. Here's a nerve cell right here. So the impulse comes into the cell. Here's the nucleus of the cell. It goes along the cell and it reaches, in this example, a muscle. Okay, what is it going to do here? It's going to tell that muscle to contract, which makes a movement. Okay, now we're going to go over a few different examples of how cell communication works. The first one has to do with cell division. Cells divide to make more cells for growth of an organism, right? As you get older, as you have grown from a baby to a teenager, you had to make more cells. Also, for the healing of wounds, if you get a scrape or a cut, those skin cells need to divide to make more cells and replace the ones that you lost. You can see an example here of how a cell divides. It basically is going to copy its DNA, its nucleus, and split into two cells. So one cell divides into two cells, and that process will continue until they have the right amount of cells, right? So these messages are so important. They make sure that your body grows, heals, and stays healthy. But what happens if this cell communication process isn't working properly? Well, a disruption to cell division is called cancer. In cancer, cell communication is broken, and this is caused by damage to the DNA in the cell's nucleus. That damage can be caused by different things, such as UV light or excess sunlight, like a sunburn, can cause changes in DNA, which could lead to skin cancer. There's also chemicals that can cause cancer in the body. And genetics could be another factor, like uh, cancer in a parent passed down to a child. Okay, those are some different causes. Now, in cancer, messages can be misinterpreted in different ways. The message might be ignored by the receiving cell, so it's almost like it got left on red. Okay, it was ignored. The message could be sent at the wrong time, so a cell is told to divide when it really shouldn't divide. And so then we are making extra cells that we don't need. And that could, over time, cause a tumor to form. A tumor is a mass of cancer cells. We could also have messages that are received incorrectly. The cell doesn't understand the message, it doesn't understand that it needs to stop dividing. Okay. So, and with these malignant tumors, malignant means cancerous. Sometimes what can happen, and this is very dangerous, is that within that tumor cell, tumor mass of cells, some of the cells could break off of the tumor, get to the bloodstream, and then travel to other spots in the body and create a new mass. And that's when it gets really dangerous. Okay. Now let's look at a second example. So this is communication between nerve cells in the brain and muscle cells. So every single time you decide to move, your brain sends a message down nerve cells. Here's nerve cells from the brain across what we call a synapse, which is just a gap between a nerve cell and a muscle cell. This is a close-up view of a synapse. It's just a little gap. Okay. And then from the synapse, it goes to the muscle cells, or muscle tissue is shown here. When the message is received by the muscle cells, it's going to tell muscles to contract and make a movement. Okay, so every single tiny little movement that you make, this process is happening constantly. This image here is just showing that again. Here's the brain. We have a nerve cell. It can be very long cells that reach to the muscle and tell it to contract. You're going to have many, many, many nerve cells connected to muscle cells to do that. What do you think would happen if nerve cells in the brain couldn't talk to muscle cells in the muscle tissue? I want you to write your response below. Okay, well, that is going to cause what we call paralysis. Paralysis is the loss of muscle function. So muscles cannot move. And it happens when communication between nerve cells in the brain and muscle cells, when that communication is damaged or blocked, right? So here we have that example of a nerve cell. If we have damage to the nerve cell right here, that message cannot be sent, okay? So it's almost like the cell tower is down and messages cannot be sent or received, okay? The message doesn't travel down the nerve cell due to damage. It could be some type of spinal injury, okay? And the muscle cell does not get the signal to move, so it doesn't move. Okay. Here is a third example, and that is insulin and glucose. So after you eat, if you eat something with carbohydrates like pasta and rice, or something sugary like pop or candy or fruit, all of those foods have sugar in them, a sugar, and that sugar is broken down into what we call glucose. So this glucose from food is going to enter your bloodstream, and then an organ that's near the stomach called the pancreas, this is the pancreas, it's going to sense that the blood has too much sugar, too much glucose, and it's going to release insulin, which is a hormone, and it acts as a message. So the insulin message is sent, it moves through the blood, and it goes to the body cells. Okay, it could be a fat cell or whatever it is. Now, the body cells, they're going to receive the message from insulin, and it's going to tell them, hey, take in some of this glucose from the blood, some of this sugar. We have too much sugar in the blood. Take it into yourself. Okay, so here's the blood. There's glucose in there, and it goes into the cell. Well, what happens with that glucose is it's used for energy. Okay, the mitochondria is going to take in that glucose and produce energy to power the cell. So that's how we use it up, which is kind of cool. Okay. What happens if there's a disruption in this communication? Well, this is diabetes. There's two types of diabetes. The first one, type 1 diabetes. Typically, people are either born with this or it's diagnosed at a very, very young age. This is when the pancreas does not make insulin. So, the message to take in glucose is never sent. So, here's type 1. The message is never sent. What does that mean? Well, that means that glucose stays in the blood and it causes high blood sugar. And so then the cells are not getting energy from glucose. What about type 2 diabetes? This one is typically diagnosed later in life. So the pancreas is going to make insulin in this case. It's going to make the message. It's going to try sending it, but the body cells do not respond to the insulin message. Okay, it's like they ignore the message. They get the message, but they're like, meh, I'm not responding to that message. Okay, and it's because they are resistant to the message. Sometimes this happens when the person has had a very high sugar diet and they just get immune to the insulin message. So, again, this means that glucose or sugar stays in the blood. You have high blood sugar, cells do not get energy. Okay, so here's our last example, and that is with the thyroid hormones. So, you have a thyroid gland, it's a small butterfly shaped gland that's in your neck. And it does a lot of things that's really important. It controls your metabolism. Your metabolism is how fast your body uses energy. Naturally, people have higher or lower metabolisms. Hey, if you eat something and you're like hungry right away after, you might have a fast metabolism. Okay, but the thyroid hormones also control your heart rate, your body temperature, and deal with growth. So here's how the communication works. The brain is going to send a message to the thyroid gland and it's going to tell it, hey, thyroid gland, let's release thyroid hormones. These hormones, thyroid hormones, are messages that are sent into the blood. The blood is kind of like a highway, right? And it's going to go to the body cells. When the body cells get that message, those thyroid hormones, it's going to tell them to work faster, to use more glucose for energy, right? And so that increases metabolism. What about a disruption with this communication system? So there's a couple different thyroid disorders. One is hypothyroidism. This is when the thyroid gland makes too little hormone. And so the message that is sent is weak. It's like bad signal, not good reception. And this means that you're going to have a slow metabolism. Symptoms in a person are going to be tiredness, weight gain, cold all the time, slow heart rate. They're going to notice this. It's going to be very disruptive to their daily life. They'll go to the doctor and they'll probably need to get some medication to speed up their metabolism. Then the other one is the opposite. This is hyperthyroidism. The thyroid gland is going to make too much hormone. So too many messages are sent. It's like someone that won't stop texting you and you're in some group message where everyone keeps sending stuff. Okay. So lots of messages are sent. They're going to have a very fast metabolism. They will experience extreme anxiety, weight loss. They'll be extremely warm and have a fast heart rate. They're going to go to the doctor when they realize this. And sometimes they have to actually kill the thyroid and give them medication. So now I want you to take a look at a few of these questions. Okay, and what is homeostasis? Look back at your notes. Respond to that question, please. Second, how does cell communication maintain homeostasis. Give me one example of how it does that, since there are so many ways that it does. Lastly, what happens when messages are missing or ignored? All right, hope this was helpful. Have a great day.